There we go.
Okay, thank you. Well, welcome to everybody attending tonight. Okay, hopefully you're in the right place. This is the Town of San Anselmo Parklet Presentation Community Workshop. The meeting tonight, we're going to be giving a 20-minute presentation about parklets. And then after that 20 minutes, we'll take questions, comments, and concerns from the public. Right now, we have a team tonight. And I will introduce them and let them introduce themselves. Let's see if I can get this to work. So we have John Bella, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Sure, yeah, I'm an urban designer and landscape architect. And I'll give a little intro in my 10-minute talk, but happy to be working with you all on guiding how you think about what's next in terms of your outdoor spaces, outdoor dining in San Anselmo.
Thank you, John. And Jessica Rising.
Hi, I'm Jessica Rising. I'm a business consultant, and I am also the chair of the Economic Development Committee.
And Elise Simonian. Oh, we can't hear you, Elise.
Muted. Elise Simonian
I'm
is
here.
the
I
planning.
can't see my screen, so hopefully I'm on the screen, but
You are.
I'm the planning director with the town of San Anselmo.
And Dmitry Laptev.
I'm the project coordinator for Public Works and for the this Parklet program.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, I am Sean Convey, the Public Works Director. And with that, we will get started. The use of parklets, or actually outdoor tables on sidewalk, was simplified a few years ago. Basically, a number of years ago, people started asking if the town could have, would allow tables on the sidewalks. And historically, and I think Elise knows this better than I do, it had to go through planning. And we looked at a way to simplify it, and basically we came up with an encroachment permit that allowed people to place tables in the public right of way as long as they met ADA requirements, and we do an annual inspection. And so a number of people started doing that. Parklets back then were talked about. They've been talked about for years, but we never had much success in getting anything going. And then came COVID, and COVID actually gave us a great opportunity back in, I think it was May 2020, right after COVID hit us. The town of San Anselmo, along with the city of Mill Valley, were the first to implement an urgency ordinance that allowed us to create temporary outdoor dining and a business program which allowed parklets and permit fast tracking. It also allowed the use of private parking lots and other spaces. With that, there's become now a long-term interest in keeping parklets here. And I'll go over more of that later on. As many of you know, there's at least 8 parklets out there, and a number of businesses do want to keep them long-term. However, in order to get there, we need a community process to look at creating a permit process that would allow the parklets to remain in the town. Parklets provide additional space for people to sit, relax, and enjoy the town. They also allow the sidewalk to be widened in areas where it's narrow. As I'm sure many of you know, we have narrow sidewalks throughout town. And so it was quite difficult, even when we just had a table permit, to work in some areas. So parklets actually give us that extra space for either putting the tables on them or selling merchandise, or even widening the sidewalk. Parklets are unique public spaces that provide seating space for nearby businesses and attract potential customers. Social life. Parklets foster a sense of community by creating welcoming public spaces to socialize. A parking space usually serves one person. These are kind of things we've got from other jurisdictions, and I actually really like them. As I was stating, a parking space usually serves one person for an hour. And what a parklet does is it turns that space over to 10 people for that very hour. Businesses in Long Beach, when they started putting in parklets, saw upticks in sales that led to staff expansions after sponsoring a parklet on their own streets. San Francisco has been kind of on the forefront of this in terms of they found the addition of a parklet on Divisadero Street resulted in an increase in the number of parked bikes. to an average of 10 at a time during weekday afternoons. Parklets have an unbelievable amount of value in bringing vibrancy to the street life. And as I'm sure many of you have seen, that downtown San Anselmo, since we've had parklets and on the Avenue and Creek Park, it's been a lot more vibrant. It's activated the street. And it's something, the town of San Anselmo has complete streets resolutions. We have, which requires us to look at multimodal activities like walking, biking. We also have an ADA transition plan, safe routes to school. So parklets really go hand in hand with a lot of things that the town is trying to do. But in speaking of San Francisco, I'd like to once again introduce John Vella, who I think was an instrumental part of that in San Francisco and getting parklets moving forward. And I think he also wants to talk about maybe the difference between parklets and shoplets. And with that, John, you have the stage. I'll unshare my screen if I can get that working.
Cool. Thanks, Sean.
Okay.
Let's see if I can share my screen here. Okay. Everyone see this okay? All right, great. Well, so thanks for coming tonight and inviting me to be part of this discussion. I wanted to talk a little bit about this idea of social infrastructure relative to the parklets, or actually what I think are currently now shared outdoor dining platforms in the public realm. A little bit of history. 2005, some friends and I did a guerrilla art installation on First and Mission in San Francisco called Parking Day. That evolved very quickly in a surprising way to become a global public participatory event called Parking Day, which was really about celebrating the kind of value of our streets and public realm and exploring alternatives to storing vehicles in the parking lane and thinking about more creative uses. In 2009, the city of San Francisco approached Rebar and said, hey, we like this idea. Could we try to make it more semi-permanent? So we built one of the first two ever in the world, one of the first two parklets. We called ours the Walklet. Not as good of a name. City of San Francisco called them parklets, and based upon the success of that pilot project, these two pilot projects, the City of San Francisco's Parklet program was born. And this has now become a model actually for supporting vibrant streets and public life around the globe. I do want to point out though that parklets actually by definition are public space. So in addition to serving the adjacent business, they're also open to the public. And that's been the sort of founding ethos since the Parklet program was created in San Francisco. And I bring that up in the context of a discussion around social infrastructure. Well, what the heck is social infrastructure? We're about, as a country, to make billions of dollars of investment in infrastructure, but it's important to note that infrastructure is not just roads and bridges. It's like the physical fabric of our communities. It's a great book I'm going to refer to, Eric Kleinenberg, Palaces for the People, the role of social infrastructure in supporting public life in our communities. Eric talks about social infrastructure as the physical elements of community that bring people together and build social capital. And so in our community, in Marin County and San Anselmo, social infrastructure would include public spaces, big public spaces like our parks and playgrounds, or our civic spaces like our libraries, or actually streets, sidewalks, public transportation are all part of that physical fabric which supports community. So it's all places where people can gather, whether that's on the Avenue in downtown San Anselmo or Creekside Park or 4th Street in San Rafael, have been thriving actually public spaces and have played a particularly important role when our more traditional social infrastructure assets like our libraries or schools have been closed. But social infrastructure also includes small spaces, coffee shops, churches, places anywhere where people can gather and actually foster community has a potential role to play in creating invitations for really vibrant public life in our cities. Eric Kleinenberg points out that not all social infrastructure is created equal. He has a great story about when he was living in a large city. The act of dropping off his kids at school, the way it was structured, meant that parents had to get out of their car or out of the public transit or whatever, and actually meet one another for a brief period of time to drop the kids off. Over time, these everyday encounters actually resulted in some really strong friendships. And in an unexpected way, this kind of everyday invitation for bumping into a stranger really became the basis of community building in Eric's life. When he moved the family to the West Coast, put the kids in a great school on the peninsula, but the drop-off and pickup drop-off experience was orchestrated to really move kids and cars in and out as quickly as possible. And that meant that this was his pickup and drop-off experience, and he never got a chance actually to meet other kids, meet other families, and therefore it didn't become a place for him to build and actually make connections in his community. Basically a missed opportunity, just in terms of how you think about the design of a particular type of space in our community. And so Eric talks about social infrastructure at its best is accessible to all, regardless of race, language, or ability to patronize a local business. And so I bring this up in the context of this discussion around the future of the outdoor spaces in San Anselmo, because I want to point out that they're actually not parklets technically today, because as far as I understand, they're not publicly accessible. So I was walking through San Anselmo, coming downtown the other week. Creekside Park was packed. It was awesome. Tables, the picnic tables were full. I thought, oh, I'll just head over to the coffee shop and sit in this beautiful parklet. I thought it was a parklet. I come around the corner and to my surprise, wow, this space is really oriented towards just that kind of commercial transaction. And hasn't been thought of as a place that actually can support broader dimension of community life. I'm not bringing this up to kind of pick on this particular design, but just to say that it's a missed opportunity that such a beautifully designed space also isn't fulfilling its potential role in terms of creating invitations for socializing in public life, in addition to supporting the commercial transaction. There's other examples of this throughout the county. I think many communities are grappling with this question, and in this case, it's a feels very sort of armored and walled in, but actually this space in Fairfax isn't even meeting kind of basic code requirements of ADA accessibility. Parklets, by definition, are universally accessible. They're an extension of the sidewalk. You have to roll off the sidewalk and be able to enter into that space quite easily. Here, there's like a 2 or 3 inch curb. Those aren't meeting this kind of basic definitions in terms of design guidelines for what the role that a parklet can fulfill. There's some other examples. I don't want to pick on any particular designs here, but just to say that these spaces have played a crucial role in supporting our local businesses, and I am 100% behind that. But now, as we think about the future, as our eyes have been opened to the role that our outdoor spaces can play in the physical fabric of our communities, I think we need to take an attitude about some design cues and what's appropriate and what's not appropriate in terms of design in the public realm. John King wrote an article last August about the outdoor dining platforms in San Francisco, differentiating them from parklets, which have a public obligation, and to say that, there's a cafe table and chair permit, which you can explore, which is really about commercial use of the public right of way, and restaurants understand that and they value it and they pay for it. The parklet program is different. It's a public-private partnership. All parklets are basically open to the public. They serve that adjacent commercial business, cafe, whatever it is, but they also create this generous offer for other types of life and activity that can take place when maybe it's not packed full of, commercial customers. So my point here is that, parklets and in San Anselmo provide this great opportunity, actually, for creativity, for commerce, art, culture, creativity, and play. And I think is a wonderful opportunity now as you step forward as a community to think about, well, how do we enable these types of spaces in our public right of way to both support our adjacent and our local businesses, which we love, but also perhaps create an opportunity for an invitation for other types of uses that really fosters, again, the sense of community and takes advantage of these spaces as critical social infrastructure that can support actually community building and the social fabric of our communities. I'm going to hand it back to you, Sean.
Thank you, John. And I just want to kind of point out a couple things before I dive into the rest of it. When this program was started back in middle of last year, it was really to help businesses get more business, because they couldn't function inside. And so it was something that was business oriented. However, whether they're public or rented public space or semi-private has yet to be determined. That's kind of what we're talking about tonight and moving forward. So to all the businesses out there, how you're using them was actually how they were meant to be used, at least in the interim. And the town wants to make sure that they're something that's functioning for both the businesses, but also the residents. I do think they've actually have made the downtown much more vibrant. Even before COVID, downtown was having issues, as we all know. So with that, I will share my screen. Let's see. Can you see that? Which screen am I sharing?
Yep.
Can you see the screen?
Restaurant and parklets diagram.
Yeah, okay. So what I'm going to do, so right now, Dimitri actually was instrumental in creating all this. Downtown has 24 eating establishments. I think about 8 with parklets outside. It might be a little bit more since this, and maybe Dimitri remembers, but I'm trying to see if I can focus into, of course, now it won't let me focus in. Whoop. Let's see, try it again. I think my computer's having a brain freeze. There we go. So downtown San Anselmo has a number of parklets, as we know right now. And when COVID first hit, when we put this process in place, we really tried to make it a fast track thing in terms of getting people permits. And literally it was Dimitri and I going door to door, and really Dimitri kind of running the program himself to a large degree, and getting people permits within 1 to 3 days. And then some people, we had examples of that you could do it on the street as long as you provided access to tables, or you could have a platform that you built. And there have been a few parklets as recently in the last 6 months or so that have become people have invested considerable amount of money and time into, with the caveat that they know that as of now they are not permanent. It's a temporary parklet, or whatever we may want to call it, program. Right now you've got the Long Way, which we saw earlier, has a parklet. Hilda's Coffee, Pearl across the street, the Coffee Roastery, Cucina, Bon Tai has one that's more up on the sidewalk, Comforts down here, and M&H Bread and Butter. And then there's a lot more established restaurants that in theory could do something. There's a few more that are ready to go, that are waiting. I believe 625 San Anselmo Avenue is going to be putting something up very shortly. Let's see, here we go. And I guess, do we still have 5 more, Dimitri, that have expressed interest in doing parklets?
So since then, I haven't heard much from a couple of them. The 625 was one of the 5 that expressed interest, and then
Marianitas.
Exactly, but they're waiting on what comes of the program, and also some of the paving of SFD later on. So they might just come in later for it.
Okay, thank you. And then here are some pictures. Here's Cucina downtown. We got a few different angles of it. Here is the one. What's the name of this establishment here? Well, there's actually M&H Bread and Butter downtown, and I can't remember the name of the establishment there with the
Aesthetic Pearl, I believe.
Pearls, exactly. Thank you. And then here's the Long Way, and actually Hilda's right next door. And then here, basically, this shows the location of all the parklets that we just saw and talked about downtown. And then these are other potential locations over on Sir Francis Drake and Greenfield, where we could have, in theory, parklets or outdoor spaces. And then here are some more places: the DG Cafe, Valente, Stefano's, Comforts, Bistro, M&H Bread and Butter. And so one of the things that when we started this, is, we're looking at, well, can we make this work? And what are the local issues? Loss of parking is one that comes up. As we know, on the Avenue, we went from Friday nights all the way through Sunday, and then we changed it just to nights, and there were concerns from some of the businesses about loss of parking. But we do have parking lots that are within easy access of most of downtown. Visual impacts are a concern, from everything from how they look to line of sight and potentially blocking, other businesses. From a public works perspective, some of the big concerns are drainage, flooding, general safety in terms of traffic. ADA access has been a big one. Are they public or private? Which we've talked about a little bit. And should there be uniform or eclectic? I'm just going to go back to some of these parklets. So one of the things you can see here on Longway is they actually made it level with the sidewalk right here. So you can have some tables down below, and then we had a step up. And really that has to do with the topography. Our streets have a very high crown on them, which is an issue in terms of having a level parklet. But we also have to make sure they're ADA compliant. Also a big issue is drainage. So most of the parklets have removable panels, all the full length here. And then if you look at Hilda's, for example, right here, the walls are removable, and they have hog wire behind them for flood events. And so a number of them have had that. The ones that look more permanent actually have pretty much met all the requirements. The town has also paid for a geomorphic flood study to show that the work that we've done and will be doing more than offsets the increase in any floodwaters within the floodway. So the next steps right now, we're on our second public meeting. After this, we will be going to a town council workshop with John Bella. And that we haven't picked a date yet, but we will make sure it's on Nextdoor and Facebook and the town website. Once we go through the town workshop, we will prepare a proposal and or an ordinance. And then we'll bring that back to the Planning Commission, the EDC, and then ultimately to the town council for review and or approval or denial of a policy that would allow the town to have long-term parklets. And with that, I think we are now on to a survey that was conducted, and I'll let Dimitri go through this information.
Yeah, thank you. I just like to thank everyone for providing feedback. Last time I checked, this says 300 plus. I think we're closer to 400 plus now of responses in the survey. There's probably over 200 written suggestions and feedback through that survey, and I've personally received over 36 emails with all kinds of feedback. And I just, again, this is a public process and we really do appreciate all of your opinions. So thank you for that. Just preliminarily, I think the numbers might have changed a little bit since yesterday, but they're within range or might have gone up a little bit. But most of the respondents, about 84%, have utilized a parklet in town. Most of the respondents, it was about 85%. Last time I checked, it was closer to 90%. Want parklets to become long-term. And then most of the respondents, it was about 78%, do not have concerns about parking availability should parklets become long-term. And then here we have a little bit more of a breakdown. So, sorry, the sun's in my face. Here we can see basically the answers broken down by how a person responded to the first question, which was, are you a resident or a business owner? And here we can see, only about 18% of residents worry about the availability of parking should the parklets become permanent, versus about 46% of business owners worrying about that, and 21% of visitors. And I think we have another slide. Yep, here we're. This question is, would you like to see parklets become long-term in the town of San Anselmo? And again, residents almost overwhelmingly at 89% said yes, they want to see parklets become long-term. With business owners, it was about 55% yes, and then 44% no. And similar with visitors, similar to residents, visitors said 85% yes and about 14% no. And that was the feedback. We're still, the survey is still open, I believe, until the end of this week. My email, the email that's on all the notices, it is going to be open throughout the process. You're welcome to bring your feedback to me, to Sean, and to town council. So we're, and with that in mind, we will now take questions from the audience. If you're calling in through the phone, it's *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. If you're on your computer or smartphone, just click on the raise hand button. And if you want to raise your hand now so that we see kind of the queue, and then we'll go from there. We'll try to limit it to 3 minutes per person, although it doesn't look like we have that many people. So I'm not going to be too stringent about it, at least at first. So let's, with that in mind, do any of the panelists have anything else to say before we start getting questions from the
I would just like to add that the survey is actually quite successful. To get almost 400 people is actually a very large turnout. So excellent.
I think it's
Yeah,
one of
and
the,
I'd like to thank Frank Gomez and a lot of the other EDC members as well. They've really been pushing the word out about the survey, and much appreciated.
Just a quick note to say that, I think one of the benefits of creating a more structured program, whether it's a Parklet program or outdoor dining program, is that it gives your business owners some certainty regarding the investment that they're planning to make in these spaces. If there's uncertainty about, hey, these are going to be removed in 3 months or half a year, versus yes, we have an annually renewable permit. There's some really well-defined design guidelines that actually, I think, creates the invitation for the business community to step up and say, yeah, I know this space is valuable, and I'm going to make an investment to make it a beautiful and kind of lasting space.
Thank you, John.
all right, so let's start with the community feedback. First up, we have Devin. I'm going to allow you to unmute yourself, Devin.
Hi there, how are you guys?
Good, how are you?
Good. So I'm actually a merchant, and I am against the parklets, but it seems like it's heading towards a permanent parklet situation. So I will claim my own parklets. How many do I get? And I think that it should be, sort of standardized in terms of who gets what and what the style is. If we're going to go this way, it needs to look really cool and nice and standardized. When I opened, the health department said I could not have tables at my store because I don't have a proper bathroom. So I guess we're just throwing that aside, and now I just have tables up front and I sell my candy out there, and it's just, everyone does that. So we just throw all that stuff to the wind, and we have parklets on the street and parking is gone, and here we go. And so is that what you guys are thinking? Or
right now, we're just taking comments and concerns, and you're going to be collecting all this information and then bringing it to the various committees and the town council for discussion. So thank you.
Yeah,
well, if the residents that have responded, usually they're not really shopping on the avenue, to be honest with you. But if they want the parklets, then I agree that it should be a standardized look and feel. And I don't understand, so the landlords don't have to pay taxes on this extra land they're taking, and I just don't understand the whole rent situation with this. I don't have to rent for the extra space that I'm taking. I don't understand that.
Thank you, Devin.
I mean, I like the free land, great, I'll take it,
Can I
but
just give a quick response there, or are we going to just take? No.
I rather just we take
can I
comments.
ask a
Okay,
question of
sure,
Devin?
sure.
Devin, this is Jessica Rising. I'm the chair of the Economic Development Committee.
hello.
Can you tell me why you are against the parklets?
Because it takes parking away from the merchants. I have friends who own restaurants, and I was totally for it during COVID because they could not allow eating inside. However, now they are allowed to have eating inside, and it's time maybe to let the merchants have their parking back. We get a lot of customers San Francisco, Mill Valley, Healdsburg, Napa, who come down and they park and they want to buy olive oil, wine, clothes. They're not riding their bike there to take home wine and 20-pound bags of dog food. You know, they need somewhere to park, and we're taking parking every day away with these parklets. The lady who's an esthetician, I've never seen anyone sitting there. Sorry to call someone out, but I just think there should be, you know, a really close look at how we're giving them out and who has them. And I'm concerned about the parking. I am, because I have customers that come in and say, I wasn't going to come, however, there was a spot, so I stopped. It is a problem in San Anselmo. I know that you guys are not hearing that or seeing that, maybe because you're talking to residents that live very close and they're walking. However, a lot of the merchants like Blanc and me, and you know, we have customers that come from far away and they need somewhere to park, and they have not been able, and parking keeps getting taken away. However, if we're going to do all parklets, fine, and let's create a great parking spot for people who are not going to be coming from the neighborhoods, a designated parking, a clear entrance to parking, a clear entrance to the parklets. You know, we either really go for it or we don't. But right now we're kind of half-assing it a little bit. It's kind of confusing for people coming from elsewhere and whatnot.
Devin, just so you know, we also
Thank you.
have a parking study, which we will be bringing at the same time that we come forward with parklets.
Mhm.
So
I know that you don't think there's a parking issue, Sean, but there actually is. And you can talk to merchants that have been there for a very long time.
no, I understand, and I think with that we should move on to the next person. Thank
Devin,
thank
I
you,
want
Devin.
to thank you so much. What we heard is that your biggest concerns about the parklets are parking, potential issues with parking, and then the look of them. Thank
And
you.
also, listen, if we're gonna do it, then fine, give every single business on the avenue a parklet, and there we go. We're all doing parklets.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Devin.
Devin.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, up next, we have Donna. You should be able to unmute yourself, Donna.
Hi, everyone. How are you?
Hi, Donna.
Good, Donna, how are you?
Wonderful. Thank you. I'm going to keep my comments brief. I just want to say that I have been very grateful that I've been able to have a parklet. I completed my parklet in November. 4 days later, we were shut down for outdoor dining and it was not available for any use for December and January. So we've been only able to use our parklet since March. So it's been 4 months. I realized that it's been such an unusual year for everyone, but I have to say, from a restaurant's perspective, I have a staff of 35 people that I need to keep employed. I have managed to do that throughout the pandemic, despite the odds. And partially that is because I've been allowed to have a parklet. And without the parklet, I potentially would have had to close my doors after being in town for 23 years.
Donna,
So-
are you with, what is the
Chuchina.
name of
I'm
your
the owner,
restaurant?
Tina.
Yes, okay, thanks.
Sure, of course. So the only thing that I want to really say right now is I understand that we're looking at a myriad of concepts, traffic, etc. My point is that we have suffered a horrendous year of business. We've all had tremendous losses. We have struggled to keep our doors open and keep our staff employed. And I'm simply asking town to give us a year like Fairfax did and extend the parklets for a year. And at that time, you'll have ample opportunity to look at the situations that you're discussing, whether they affect traffic, whether they affect parking. I, for one, have had 100% feedback from all of my clientele saying that they love them. They hope they stay forever. It feels like Europe. Everyone's out on the streets. They love the community. They love the energy that it's brought to our downtown. And And I have to say, when I initially did the Parklet Blanc, Nancy and I've been neighbors for years and years and years. She was very skeptical and worried, and she's fully on board. She is seeing an uptick in her business because people are sitting in my Parklet and looking in her windows and shopping in her store. And I think that it is beneficial to all the businesses downtown because we're bringing people downtown. They're walking, they're strolling, they're eating, they're dining, and they're seeing businesses that they never saw before. And I would hope that we could at least look at it, even in the short term. We don't even have to look at it in the long term right now, but I'd like to look at it in the short term of give us a year. We have suffered huge losses. Give us a year to make up some of what we've lost. And in that time, we can, at that point, have more processes in place. But I think we're doing a tremendous service to our community. And like I said, 100% of my clientele is completely on board. They love it. They never want to see them go away.
Thank you, Donna.
Donna,
Abs-
thank you.
All right, next we have Erin. You should now be able to unmute yourself, Erin.
Hi, my name is Erin. I own Saks Consignment, which is right in between the new restaurant going in and I'm in Hilda's, the Parklet, and Long Way that's there. Anyways, I'm kind of with Donna, and I'm also kind of with Devin on different aspects of this, right? So I understand outdoor dining is a lot of fun. It's something that we don't have a ton of, restaurants in downtown San Anselmo. That being said, all of the restaurants that have a Parklet also already have outdoor dining. So Cucina has outdoor dining, Taco Jeans has outdoor dining, Keats Hall or 625A, whatever it's going to be called, they're going to have a rooftop dining area. So as far as some of the restaurants needing outdoor dining, they already have it. I understand that they needed Parklets during COVID shutdown, and I think it was wonderful that they were able to have that. Now our town is getting busier, and again, the parking is becoming a huge, huge problem. I would say 100% of my customers complain about parking being difficult. Let's see here. We are very lucky that we have 3 beautiful parks to visit. We have the new park across the street from us. There's Imagination Park, and there's also the park that is in front of Town Hall. So as far as parklets go, I do live in San Francisco. I do see the parklets that are built here. A lot of the parklets that were built are in areas where there wasn't outdoor space, so they were needed. Whereas in the one block of San Anselmo, we have ample outdoor parklets, or I'm sorry, parks. So as far as building a parklet, I kind of think that those should be put in areas where there is available space and it's not detrimental to businesses. For example, across the street from the post office, there is ample parking spots. Make a long parklet out there, bring some business down to that side of the neighborhood because our business can't get to us because there's no parking. Another problem is I'm seeing a lot of screeching halts when it comes to that crosswalk in front of Hilda's. My window directly looks at Hilda's and that crosswalk situation. It's an absolute blind spot. It's super dangerous. I do see kids, like small kids aren't even seen because that the wall of the parklet is too high. So it's kind of dangerous. It's also just not fair for some of these storefronts, kind of like what Devin said. Are we all gonna get a parklet? Because it's just not fair for some of these storefronts who depend on that visual real estate. Like people need to be able to see my business. They need to be able to see Sugar. They need to be able to see Belinda Wickware. Like they need to be able to see these businesses in order to be like, hey, I want to go in there. If they're covered by a bunch of parklets everywhere, you're really blocking the view and kind of the reason why we have downtown spaces. Parking has been an issue for decades. I'm not sure how this the bucket keeps getting pushed down the way. I you know, I was in Mill Valley today and they have one parklet that is in front of, oh God, the Italian place right there. And other than that, they don't have parklets. So they aren't dealing with that issue that we're dealing with, and they have a really thriving downtown. I mean, I know they're a little bit larger than us, but that is something that's definitely, you know, and I even asked a couple of the shop owners who I saw down there, and I said, you know, when you come to San Anselmo, what's your biggest issue? And they said parking. They said, if I can't find parking, I try to visit on a different day where I can actually find parking. Let's see, my other thing, solutions to
Erin,
some of these
if
things.
If you could make it short.
Yeah,
please.
absolutely,
We have
Sean,
other
I'm right
people
with
waiting.
you.
Thank
Sure.
you.
So I know that Hild is on Longway, and mind you, I think these parklets are very cute, but they're just not right for the business area. But maybe a solution would be to put those parklets on the back side of where Hilda's is and where Longway is, because there is just their own private parking spots. Turn that into a little like food court area. We don't need those 5 private parking spots. They can, you know, those businesses can have a, you know, parking spot somewhere else. Make that an area for them to have an outdoor area. It'd be a great idea. So anyways, I'm against the parklets. I don't think they're great for our business. I'm all for open spaces. We don't need any extra open spaces. We have tons of them to access. If you want to build parklet things, go down to the other end where there is ample space. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. And
All right, and then next we have Chris. You can now unmute yourself, Chris.
Hi, how are you guys?
hi, Chris. Thank you.
Hi. Okay, I'm the owner of Longway, and I find this all very interesting. I actually, Erin, I think you have a great point of putting a parklet behind in our parking spaces. I'm in a kind of interesting position because I am actually a clothing brand. I design and produce clothing. And then we also have a full coffee shop that we opened right before COVID. So it's 2 different things. So I see it from a merchant side of a clothing shop / clothing designer, and from the side of having and running a full coffee shop. And so I kind of understand both views. I actually think that the parklets bring more traffic. So that's where I disagree. But again, I think everything's individualized. I do think that there is a disconnect, John, with the community space aspect, which I think is a beautiful thing. I think the hard part for anyone that's built one is that it was not presented in that manner. And therefore design would have been different. You know, when we built ours, we never got a lick of rent relief. We've had to pay full-time everything all the time. I have 3 salaried full-time employees and 5 others on payroll. And it was basically rolling the dice. I knew I was building this parklet, that it could be taken away, but it was either build a parklet to survive and to possibly thrive more than I was, or to go down in flames, which I was going to go down in anyway. And so when we built it, it was definitely built for our brand. It was definitely built to be branded for our store. It was definitely built with almost out of our marketing budget, if that makes sense. And also because we wanted people to see our parklet and see the design and want to come into our shop. Then they would find our coffee shop because it's hidden in the back. It was not in any way presented as a community space, and it would have been designed in a very different manner. What's hard for me in that aspect is it was a shit ton of money. I'm sorry, I'm a hillbilly from West Virginia, so I cuss a lot, but it was so much money building this parklet. And we have ended up reaping the benefits from it. And we let anyone sit there unless our customer cannot find a seat. That's very important. People don't see our sign. So Barton's Bagels sits there all day long, and we don't care unless our customer cannot find a seat. And then we politely ask people to move to the park because we spent a lot of money building that space for our own customer. So it's really hard for me to reconcile having a community space when I was the one footing the bill and the employees and the cleanup and everything, and will continue to do so. I think that's a major difference than being presented that these are community spaces as well as your own. I think that's hard to go back to. To go back to everyone having a uniform space, number one, I think is boring. And number two, I also think that it's really unfair for the people that have already built theirs. Potentially.
Just the point on uniformity, as you can see in the parklets in San Francisco, they're incredibly diverse.
Yes.
And actually, they really reflect the nuance of those individual proprietors. And you have a beautiful space.
Yes,
But
and I get
also in San Francisco, they're all publicly accessible, because we're talking about the street is part of public space.
The street
And
is part of
so-
public space that
That's
you
right.
have. So I think there's a lot to figure out, but it was not, it was more presented as an extension and thought of as an extension of your business, which I'm so grateful for, because instead of going down in flames, we had an okay year, and it's because I took the risk. I went in this knowing that this could go away. So I'm not even here to fight about the parklets going away. I knew the risk. I was rolling the dice. I do think that you lose a year, you should have more time than Donna's 3 months of using a parklet to make that money back up. So I agree that you should have another year, and then we can reconsider and think about the longevity of these parklets, and how they are being used. But I think we built them as a business, for a business, marketing a business to stay alive in a pandemic, and that is very different than building it before or after or post-pandemic. I also think for us, we are in a hard spot. We're right next to a really popular to-go bagel shop. And so we basically built a $40,000 parklet for bagel people to sit and eat. Again, my son is one of the many kids that does it. I'm fine. It's hard. We are constantly cleaning up, it's basically, we just marketed bagels. And so it's hard for me to reconcile those things. I personally love parklets in our town. It's not just a personal use of, if anything, restaurants need them. I mean, we do have a full coffee shop with food, but restaurants need them for their loss this past year, and I would not have survived without it. Emotionally and physically, I cannot battle another thing with these parklets in terms of, you need to tear it down and build it this way, or I am out. I am.
Well, Chris, right now, that's why we're talking, and I can tell you right now, there's no plan in the short term to take them away. And
yes,
I will be going to council about that.
And Sean, and Dimitri, you guys have been amazing, and I'm so thankful. I think it's just incredibly exhausting, and to have gone by code and build it to code and build it for whatever, and then have to be told that not only are you fighting to keep it to stay, which I understand completely. I rolled that dice, but to have it to fight for the design or a community space when it was never presented as such is really exhausting. And there's a lot of logistics around that. Like, who brings in our chairs? How could our chairs be stolen? Who's cleaning up? There's a lot that has to be figured out. I'm with Donna in allowing the parklets to stay longer, and looking at it in the future once people can recoup their losses from this year. And then going forward, looking at it being used more as a community space and adapting and figuring that out as well.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And before we go on to any more comments or questions, Dimitri, I just want to, we're giving people extra time. So actually, I'd like to a show of all hands, anybody who wants to make comments, and just to be respectful, because if we have a lot of people who want to comment, then we probably need to stick to 3 minutes moving forward. So if everybody who wants to speak can please raise their hand now so we can see how many people we have out there. There's 5, maybe. Okay.
All right, so let's go to the next one, and yeah, I'll start to be a little bit more stringent about the 3 minute rule. So Michael, please, you can now unmute yourself, Michael.
Yeah, thanks, guys. First off, I want to say, it's great that the people who have suffered, well, it's great that people have made it through to the other side and we're not fully out of this, but so I sympathize and empathize with the people, all the retailers. But one of the things I think that's really important, what makes the city special, is the draw that brings you to the downtown. What the retailers offer is not the big box. And so I think in terms of having the parklets, I think it's important as a draw. It's definitely, I've seen it in the city in San Francisco, and I think it really has enlivened the streets in a way that many probably didn't think it would. You think about Europe and street life and activity on the street. It provides something that allows people to come down there. I fully believe this is something we should try to keep. And then in terms of consistency, I think one of the issues is, and I think John pointed out, there's a lot of diversity in the ones in San Francisco, which I think is good. I don't think we want them to all look the same. I think it does allow people to provide some creativity. There probably should be some guidelines so that it doesn't just become, there are definitely some shanty types in San Francisco, mixed in with some beautiful ones. I think the other thing I would say is just quickly that I liked some of the images that John pointed out. One of the great ones that Rebar did on 22nd Street, that one of the first ones, I love the fact that you could have some activity that you provide bonus kind of experience beyond just restaurant eating or something. I think if you can find methodology or reason for people to come downtown, I think the retailers will see huge benefit because there's a draw, that the parklets become a draw in a way, and it definitely enlivens the street life. So I'm fully in favor of them. I think the issue of parking is one that should be addressed and is a concern. I live in San Anselmo. I love walking downtown. And, I love the fact that there's another draw for us. And I love the park that you've done. Creekside Park is great. So I think anything that can start to give us a reason to come downtown, to go to those retailers, is going to be a benefit. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Michael.
All right, up next we have Dan. Dan, you can now unmute yourself.
Hi, and thank you. It's my opinion that the downtown space is the most valuable real estate in San Anselmo, and the community using it is the best thing we can do. I don't like to see that space being used for cars and parking, because I think that's not the most efficient way to use the square footage. I personally really fully support using the parklets as dedicated space for dining. My family really enjoys eating outdoors in the Marin County climate, and we choose restaurants based on the availability of outdoor dining. And so the more of that we have in downtown San Anselmo, the happier we're going to be, and the more often we're going to be down there. I honestly am really in favor of all of the things that we do that take the street away from cars and give it to people. And I think that the increased foot traffic from that is a net benefit for all the businesses. I think that the retailers whose customers are complaining about parking, those customers are possibly still going to show up, right? They're squeaky wheels, they complain, but they're still in there, they're buying. What you're not getting is you're not getting the people that walked past and just happened to come in, or the ones who were eating at the restaurant next door and have been looking in your window, like Donna said, for like an hour and are curious. It's one of the things I like about On the Avenue is that it gets us down there and walking past retailers, although I wish more of them were open during that. And I think that less parking downtown is going to reduce traffic. If the cars aren't driving up and down San Anselmo Avenue looking for an open spot, if they instead take a spot as close as they can get it, or they park on Greenfield, or they park on Sir Francis Drake and they walk past some of those retailers on the exterior of town, right? You're going to increase more foot traffic. They're going to walk past stores you might not have seen because you're used to just driving and parking right in front of the clothing store you're going to. I do like parklets for public use, but I also like our parks for that. And I wouldn't want to see that replace the private uses. I really think that knowing that we can go to this restaurant and they have this space available or this coffee shop is a big value. And the last thought I had was around traffic safety. I certainly don't want to see people injured in crosswalks, and it is a concern of mine in downtown San Anselmo, which is why I'm, worried about more traffic down there. And I think that if drivers feel less safe on a road, they tend to drive more cautiously. And so the things we can do to change that perception, not make it less safe, but make it harder for drivers to speed through and blow through crosswalks is a good thing. So thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Great comments. Thank you.
All right, up next we have Barbara. You can now unmute yourself, Barbara.
Hello. We are both business owners downtown and downtown residents. And my husband owns Ludwig's. So we appreciate business downtown. It helps everybody. We love the parklets. We love eating out at all the restaurants in this beautiful climate, walking downtown. It has made the town as vibrant as Fairfax. And I think it's been a wonderful addition. And parking is a thing. It always will be a thing. But the question I have for the other shop owners that are concerned about that is, where do your employees park? I think employee parking is kind of driving a lot of the parking problems downtown. We have employees, it's a thing. If there was an employee parking lot where there could be, all of our employees could park, like maybe if the town would figure out some solution for that, that could lighten up the traffic downtown. Whatever amount of parking spaces they're taking away from the parklets it might be a little bit looser. If the 12 salons and the 10 stores and all the restaurants, all their employees weren't parked right down in the core, that would certainly leave it out open for customers. That being said, I do not want the street closed, but I wouldn't mind if every parking space on the street was taken with a parklet, if it was being used. Because it's really the flow that's the problem. It's not the actual spots. Like, who can ever get a spot on the main street? I don't know, because they're full all day from, people that are parked there for several hours on end. So I think the parklet should be there. It's a wonderful place. I'd love to see the businesses thrive. And that's my comment.
Thank you very much.
It's a great point about, the timing in terms of how those existing parking spaces are utilized, whether or not you can park there for an hour or 5 hours or 10 hours, but like managing your existing parking so that enables turnover and can support retailers as well as supporting the kind of public life you're mentioning. It's a really great point. Thanks for bringing that up.
All right, and up next we have Stacy. You can now unmute yourself, Stacy.
Hi, good evening. It's actually Mark Quinones, Stacy's husband. I am a resident here in San Anselmo and a frequent patron of the shops and restaurants in our downtown, and a business owner that is actively opening the restaurant at 625 San Anselmo Keens Hall. So I do feel as though I've got skin in the game on several fronts here. And what struck me, and John and I have talked about this somewhat recently, but what struck me a little bit is the term of parklet, and perhaps that means something different in different communities. Not all communities, streets, neighborhoods are built the same. They don't all serve the same needs. They don't all have the same patterns and challenges. So perhaps if we don't get hung up on what it means in other communities, we might really solidify and hone in on what it means for our community. I also think it's important for us to consider what are the purpose of these parklets, as we're calling them, and to consider the various purposes that they have served and will serve, depending on the period of time we're talking about. As Donna mentioned, and Chris mentioned, the parklets really saved them and allowed them to keep their doors open and keep their employees working and to muscle through it. And they took that risk, and it helped to save them during an incredibly difficult time. And I think over this next period of time, the parklets will also, help those same businesses recover from the painful deficit of the past year. But what I think we really need to consider, and part of what this conversation should be going forward, is what is the value that the parklets will bring to our community going forward, because we can't just be hung up on what it's done for us in the past. I think COVID took so much from so many, but it actually did gift us a few things. It gifted us the opportunity to look at things in a different way, to consider that perhaps our spaces could be used differently, and it challenged us to take risks that we may not have otherwise, and it challenged our town and staff and elected to support businesses in a way that perhaps they weren't forced to or didn't have the opportunity to before. And I think that not embracing that is a missed opportunity. And looking at, would we have ever been able to spring up a movement to get 8 parklets built out on the street in short order, were it not for this horrible pandemic? So we ought to get something for that. And I think in the near, mid, and longer term, the purpose of the parklets will evolve. I, for one, am definitely a fan. I think, as John mentioned, about an individual, a friend of his, who had experienced 2 different models of dropping off kids, and really felt the difference in the community that was struck from that. Well, there are a lot of people that will come downtown for a single purpose. They're going to duck into a single shop to pick something up, or perhaps they're going to go into a single restaurant for a meal. But if we're presented out on the street, our community is enriched by that. It's much more vibrant. We have so many more of those connections that we might have missed if it weren't for the fact that we were gathered on the street to dine or have a cup of coffee. And I think
a couple more seconds here.
Sure. Last quick points. While I do think that standards are important, I think that standardizing uniformity, as Chris said, is boring. I, for one, am totally inspired by what Chris built there. I think she set the bar for pushing and creating something compelling and beautiful that represents her brand. And I think that we should be embracing that spirit of the individual community, individual members of the community, and how we really how we can all benefit from it. So I'll leave it at that.
Well said. Well said.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
All right, up next we have Bonnie. You can now unmute yourself, Bonnie.
Hi, I just wanted to echo pretty much all of the comments that have been happening, especially recently, in favor of the parklets. Just wanted to briefly weigh in from the perspective of, I'm not a merchant, I'm not a restaurant owner, and I'm not a San Anselmo resident. I'm a Fairfax resident. And I have to say that before COVID and before the parklets, San Anselmo, even though it was, the next closest town over, it was just not a destination on my or my family or my friends' radar. I'd go down in town here in Fairfax, or I'd keep going to San Rafael or Mill Valley or up to Petaluma or out to Point Reyes. San Anselmo just kind of felt a little sleepy. And it is just done a total 180. I feel like the community vibe, the liveliness, the seeing people out in the streets, the music, everything, and largely in part, I think, due to the parklets and having just bodies instead of cars being visible on the road, have made it a totally like my top destination. And I feel like, or I know for sure that I have gone inside more businesses, new to me businesses, not at all new to the town, but ones that I hadn't been in before. I've purchased items that, you know, like let's see, what am I trying to say? I'll go to town to eat in a restaurant, use the parklet, but while I'm waiting or while I'm walking from my car to the spot, I have noticed and gone into and made purchases and returned to stores that I never had before. I'd never been in the olive oil shop. I just went in last week. I went into Curate Studio and now I only go there for my bath care stuff. My friends and I go to, I think it's Long Way, get their coffees because the parklet is so cute and such a nice space. I've gone to the I think it's the fig tree, the fig garden, something like that. That's kind of towards the end of town, because I parked further away intentionally to walk around, because it's a cool thing to do, to walk around in town, because you're not the only person walking around in town anymore. And it kind of used to feel that way. So I am totally in favor of them staying, not from any vested interest other than that I know that it makes me and, I don't know, other folks that I know go to visit, patronize, shop in, eat in San Anselmo much more. I personally prefer it so much to Mill Valley. I find Mill Valley really hard to find parking, even though apparently they only have one parklet. So, you can find an opinion to probably for every position, but I'm definitely on the pro parklet side. So that's it. Thank you. And thank you for how you're conducting all this. It's been really interesting and it feels great to have a chance to give input.
Thank you, Bon.
Very much.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
All right, up next, David. You can now unmute yourself, David.
Hi, thanks for taking the time and for putting together this meeting. I live in downtown San Anselmo with my family, grew up in Ross Valley. I'm a small business owner and just mainly I'm someone who loves San Anselmo. I'm not a merchant, I'm not a restaurant. I don't have skin in the game in the way that some of the people who've been sharing today have. Mine is that I'm someone here who loves San Anselmo and very happy to have my family here. I strongly believe that the parklets bring a fresh new life to the town. There's a fun vibe in the town, and I think a lot of that now is thanks to the parklets. The amount of community building in town has noticeably increased. The number of people who are, saying hello, people driving by. I know when I drive by, I'm, more interested in what's happening in town now because I see people out and about in a way that we would never have seen before because they were all inside the different restaurants. I'm sure traffic studies could help this once COVID is sort of isn't around as much, but I would imagine that the number of people coming into San Anselmo has dramatically increased. And I think having these parklets and outdoor spaces has really made a big impact on that reason that they have increased. I think that once COVID is less of an issue, San Anselmo is going to be bursting at the seams. I think all the merchants, all the restaurants are going to be just totally in a great space, and that's my hope and that's my belief. Parking is definitely an issue in San Anselmo. There's no question about it. Everybody knows that San Anselmo doesn't have enough spots, and whether or not you add 10 more spots or you take away 10 more spots, it's not going to make the difference. Hopefully now more locals are going to bike and walk into town as they realize that there are a fewer spaces. I mentioned this in a survey I filled out. My biggest concern about the parklets is a car making contact with the side of one of them driving down the street. I'm not sure if there's a way the town can come up with a way to help the merchants or the restaurants to reinforce at least the edge on the traffic side. I believe San Rafael has some heavy water-filled partitions that they put next to some of the parklets to help to mitigate the risk. But I think there have been issues around the country of cars making contact with parklets, and if that happens when they're full, that is definitely not a good thing for quite a few reasons. While it's clear, I think the parklets give the biggest boost to restaurants. I believe without a doubt that when the restaurants are succeeding, when so many people are coming down, if they're waiting for a table, if they're had a drink or two and they're hanging out and they're having fun with their friends or having a good time together, that they are also going to support the merchants at this time as well. Hopefully the merchants will be able to adapt with this as well. But I want to recognize that some merchants are fearful, and I think this is a legitimate fear. They're worried that the parklets are going to negatively impact their business. And while I may disagree with that belief, their fear is real, and I think this fear needs to be respected. I was wondering, in terms of supporting the shop owners and the merchants, is there a way, and would it help them if the number of 30 or 45-minute or 60-minute spots were increased in downtown, especially right in front of some of these merchants? So someone could pop into Sugar and grab some candy, or grab a nice birthday present from one of the many amazing merchants who's selling clothing or whatnot in downtown. In closing, the parklets, I think they added tremendous value to the town. I strongly, strongly support keeping them open. I hope, quite frankly, that they'll become permanent. And then a last thought is, as we have lost a few spaces, Shugui Gardens remains vacant and has been for a while, and the landlord has a chain up to make sure no one parks in their spots. And I think they have, 5, 6, 7, 8 spots. Perhaps the town could consider, if there's room in the budget, to lease those parking spaces and maybe make up for some of the lost spaces from the parklets to help support the businesses. So thanks for listening, and thanks for putting this meeting together.
Thanks, David.
Well said. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I just like to add, I think some people have raised their hand who've already spoken, and we're going to skip them and go to people who haven't spoken. Thank you.
All right, Frank, you can now unmute yourself, Frank.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello, hello.
So I am in favor of keeping the parklets. I feel that it's actually slowed traffic down downtown. And I know for a fact it's stopped people, well, slowed down people making illegal U-turns as well. I feel that it's also created a better vibe for the town. I like the individuality of each parklet. I don't feel that they should be uniformed. I feel also that people spending $30,000, $40,000 on a parklet, we should at least give them 1 or 2 years to try to recoup that back already on a year where it's down. I'm one of the few merchants that probably is for this. I also have people traveling from San Francisco, Napa, Santa Rosa, Petaluma, Sonoma shopping in my practice. And most of the locals that come in, I've not heard one negative comment about the parklets. I feel it brings vibrancy to the town. I want to echo what Bonnie said. I met her and Victoria because they were there. And I don't feel that the parklets are blocking. It's not going to stop people from coming in to your business. Keats Hall is opening up next door to my practice, and they weren't even thinking of a parklet. It wasn't on their radar. And I went to Josh, Mark, and Linda and said that they should build a parklet out front, and they're going to take 2 spots right in front of my practice. And I'm on the belief that people are going to be looking in my shop while they're dining there. So I hope that everybody tries to look at it as a positive. And I understand people's concern about parking, but I've been in business since 2008. There's been parking issues since then. The biggest concern for me is, if you really want parking, enforce the parking. We let business owners and their employees park there all day long and don't enforce the parking. I'm constantly going to owners of the business and asking them to move their cars and their employees, or I'm calling Marin Police Authority to come down and ticket the cars. And I shouldn't be a parking meter maid. I also have a business in Mill Valley, so I'd have to disagree with what Aaron said earlier. They enforce that parking. And actually right now, San Anselmo is the heart and soul of Marin. People are enjoying how it is lively. Before the first few years being down here at 5 o'clock, San Anselmo's dead and Fairfax would come alive. Now it's the opposite. We have this opportunity to really build and become the heart and soul of Marin over Larkspur, Mill Valley, Fairfax. So hopefully everybody will keep an open mind. and try to see this as a positive. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank.
Thanks, Frank.
Thank you.
All right, and up next we have Belinda. Belinda, please unmute yourself.
Hi. Let's see. Yeah, I'm unmuted. Hi, thanks for listening. I am a merchant. I have Belinda Wickbar Jewelry, and you guys have heard from me before, but I just wanted to chime in again. I am not opposed to the parklets. I just feel that going forward, I think there's proposed 5 more parklets that are on the table, and in a 2-block radius. I feel like 13 parklets is a bit overkill for a small area. I also feel that if someone has a parklet, they should respect the merchant next door to them or beside them, that they don't impose any visual obstructions onto that parklet. Parking is an issue for my customers. I know that many people feel that it's not, but a lot of these people that are speaking are young and healthy. And I personally have a lot of older customers that don't walk well, and they like to park very close to my store. So parking continues to be a strong issue for me. I need them to be comfortable. Also, I know it was mentioned that for employees or people that have businesses parking on the street, while that's not great, sometimes parking is really hard when you have a store and you have employees and you're trying to find a place to park in the neighborhoods, and that's not fair to the neighborhoods either. And a lot of those people that do complain about those have their own designated parking spaces, so that's not really a fair argument from them. I would also say that if we're going to continue to build more parklets, then perhaps we just close the road. And it's, we don't have to have this conversation anymore. And my final thought is I've opened my store in September, and I was a new business on the street. And I was beside a parklet that was instantly erected like a month or 2 after I opened. And that restaurant was struggling, and I saw the struggles, and I felt the pain that was going on there. And I too was a new business, and I was struggling. So it's not just the restaurants that are struggling, it's the merchants that are struggling. And the focus here is on those people that made those huge investments on those parklets. However, they took that chance. So the merchants are also struggling, and I feel that we cannot be forgotten. The retailers cannot be forgotten. The hair salons cannot be forgotten, because we too have invested in our businesses. So I hope that we don't get forgotten in this argument. And I hope it's not really an argument discussion, but it does start to feel like an argument, and it does start to feel personal. So while I want the town to thrive, and I do support those parklets that have invested heavily in their parklets, I also feel like they should be a fee that they have to pay it's a rental fee. They're using space. That should be rolled back into the town, and maybe stringing lights up or signage or marketing for the rest of us, so we can too benefit from those parklets. I think that's it.
Thank you.
Great points, Belinda. Thank you.
Linda, thank you.
Since this has come up a few times, I just want to let people know that there is a parking study that will be coming forward to council along with the parklets. And there actually are about 20 dedicated employee parking spaces that are actually prime parking in Creek Park, and that's going to be looked at too.
So we do have a couple messages of feedback in chat. I'm not going to read them out loud, but I invite our panelists to take a look at them. And we did have one question from Michael, and it was, how can I get more involved in the planning of downtown? And my suggestion would be, stay tuned to the town website, and especially next door, as a lot of the meetings and these decisions that require public input, they are posted there frequently. I would also suggest, attending the town council meetings if there's something on the agenda that you're, passionate about. But also, to a certain extent, maybe the planning commission or the EDC, and I'll let maybe Jessica or Sean or Elise give their advice there.
Hey, Dimitri, I want to make sure that we capture all of these comments that people have left. We have quite a few of them.
I will do that.
Thank you so much. Do we have anybody else that's wanting to speak?
We have Erin who already spoke, but we do still have about 6 minutes left, so I'm going to allow her to talk again. Erin, you can now unmute yourself. Erin.
Hi, thank you again. It's been so wonderful to hear everybody's opinions on it every which way. And there was a very lovely man, I didn't catch his name, who, when he said, I really understand how merchants are nervous about losing spots. And I just, part of it that I want to say is, yes, I absolutely love that there is more community downtown. And I think a huge part of that actually is from the park that went across the street. I'm not sure a huge amount is from the parklets, but that being said, some of the parklets are beautiful and it is kind of nice. What I'm kind of concerned about too, another aspect that, maybe someone can answer in the future is, when Hilda's has a parklet right next door to me and they are closed 2 days a week and they generally shut down by noon, that to me is a hard pill to swallow when 3 parking spots are used pretty much during all, open business hours when people can't access it. And I understand they need outdoor for this previous time, but moving forward, I'm not sure if, parklets are closed for the majority of the retail business hours. That's a concern to me. And another concern is, I know a lot of people say, hey, if these restaurants, while people are waiting at the restaurants, they're going to go into your store and this and that. We're not open during the evening. We're a daytime business. Most of us retailers are a daytime business. So we love you poking into our windows. And I have so many people who say, hey, I walked by and saw something in your window last night. And maybe they were going to Kachina or wherever. And that's great. And I love that. So I just do feel, like Belinda said, with the upcoming possible adage of more parklets on a 2-block radius, it just gets nerve-wracking as a merchant, because we need our people to get to us. We do have old customers. We have customers who are bringing us heavy amounts of things. We have customers who are taking heavy amounts of things out of our stores. Like, it's just that availability, and I am concerned and worried if people don't have access to me or to some of our retailers. And I love outdoor dining. It's wonderful. I live in foggy San Francisco. I can never eat outdoors, so I appreciate the outdoor dining stuff. I just feel like there needs to be some give each way. I think merchants need to be taken into account, and restaurants, kind of some type of equal something going on.
Erin, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it sounds like your biggest concern is parking, right? That's what I'm hearing.
For the most part, yeah, absolutely. Because, and it's so true. There are plenty of people, like I'm going to call out Wells Fargo. I see all of those bankers parking all day long on the street. And it's that thing, we don't have any policing of the parking. If we did, I think we would have far less problems with parking, or put meters up, charge $3 an hour. Nobody's going to sit there all day long.
So part of the parking study, so the literally like 50 to 100 feet in front of your shop are 20 spots that are, for employees only, which we're looking at changing that. So that
you mean behind the park?
Right behind Creek Park, the new park, right? There's like 20 spots there that are employees only right now. And we're looking at changing that. That's part of it. We're also, and this is all going to council and nothing's been determined.
That would be wonderful, by the way. Continue.
Yeah, and then, part of the problem too is our parking is backwards in San Anselmo. We have the prime parking free, and then the less prime parking you pay for. And so we are looking at, we just put 2 new pay stations in, one in the Magnolia lot, one in the Pine Street lot. We're looking at putting pay stations, throughout San Anselmo, and that could also help with parking enforcement. We're also looking at some apps to help with parking enforcement. So those are things we will continue to work on.
Okay, and maybe making it more than 50 cents an hour because people,
Yeah,
like
it's a
people
penny a
will just
minute
like
right now.
sit
Yeah.
there. Yeah, I mean, it's like, so I mean, I agree. Like, it's been wonderful to hear everybody's opinions. It's just, I really, San Anselmo has become more vibrant, and I do appreciate that. And, the park across that street is just, it's great with music and all that kind of stuff. It's been wonderful, but just everybody's concern is a real concern. And how can you please 100 people? I don't know, but finding the best ground would be a beautiful thing.
Aaron, this
But-
is exactly
Aaron.
why we're doing these sessions and spending so
Mhm.
much time trying to gather input
Yeah.
and opinions from everybody.
Yeah.
Just including merchants and, residents and staff, and, we just really appreciate you coming and giving your opinion.
Yeah, and also on that note, I will say every single one of these meetings that I've come to, which I think has maybe been 4 or something, they all revolve around the same thing, which is parking. So to me, it kind of seems like, how has this not been something that's solved yet? Because I mean, I've only owned that shop for 3 years, but I've worked on San Anselmo Avenue or been around it for 25 years. And this has been a problem for 25 years. And you're just like, what's going on here? How can no one, this is number one problem. Let's get to it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, you guys. I really appreciate it.
Great point. Yeah.
Thanks, Aaron.
Come visit.
Coming.
I'll take care of everyone.
Okay.
All right, Sean, you want to close this up?
Well, I just wanted, if for everybody who's still out there, if you have questions, I think you can still see my screen. And there's a survey still that's out there. We have our website. We will be having a town council workshop where we explore parklets even more. And it will come back both to the planning and the EDC committee, and then ultimately to town council. And there should be more time to figure this out, so that's what we're planning on doing, is taking our time to get there. I don't know if John or Jessica or Elise, anybody else wants to say anything, but
Just to say that it's been a fantastic discussion, and I'm so glad that people showed up and are taking the time to participate in shaping the future and really tackling these tough questions. And so really respect everyone's point of view. And this is the kind of dialogue that I think is really going to result in a good outcome. So just excited to be part of this, and that there's so many kind of smart and creative people in the town that want to be part of this process of shaping, making a great town, great and inviting town. So, yeah.
thank you, John.
I want to thank everyone for taking time out of their busy schedules to be a part of this process, whether they're filling out a survey, sending an email to Dimitri, or coming and being live. Your opinions really matter to the EDC, the town, and all of us as we move down this path. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, good night, everybody.
Bye.
Good night, all.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Thank you all.